All right, SEC championship game, Georgia and Texas. This is another regular season rematch that we've got here. The Longhorns, 2.5-point favorites, 49 the total. This game, as it always is, of course, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. That's where this game is each and every year. This will be the first year ABC gets to broadcast the SEC championship game. It's been CBS all these years, but now with the changes in the television rights, ABC gets this game with Fowler and Herbstreit. It's going to be weird. No Gary Danielson, and for a long time, him and Vern, and then it was him and Brad Nessler, but nope, not anymore. Now that ABC has this game and all the SEC rights. Obviously, a rematch of the game earlier this year between these two teams. And I think you can make a good case that that game with Georgia-Texas earlier this year was probably Texas's worst game of the season and probably Georgia's best game of the season. I certainly was surprised that night to see just how dominant, obviously, Georgia was, 30-15 in that game over Texas. Their defensive line made things difficult for Quinn Ewers, made him struggle quite a bit. They shut down the run game, a run game that just ran over Texas A&M this past Saturday. Was a run game that was completely shut down by Georgia when these teams met earlier this season. Quintrevian Wisner, Ryan Wingo, you name it. They just couldn't get anybody going down the field. So that was definitely surprised that Georgia too in that game was coming off the loss to Bama, a lethargic couple of wins against Auburn and Mississippi State, and people were questioning just how good Carson Beck and Georgia were, going into that Texas game, and then they just they dominated, and 30-15. If you watch that game, you will see that it was pure domination here for Georgia. This game has me leaning Texas, believe it or not, but the concerns are that Georgia has a guy in Kirby Smart that knows how to win these type of games at this time of year. We know that. A slight underdog, and that's usually where we like to bet Georgia, just like they were against Texas in the meeting back in October when they were a 4-point dog to the Longhorns, and they ended up winning this game outright. But I look at the way these two teams are entering this game, and you see Georgia after they lose to Ole Miss, terrible performance in that game, just beaten up at the line of scrimmage by the Ole Miss Rebels on the road, 28-10. The Tennessee performance was solid, but I don't think it was a dominant victory that Georgia had at home against Tennessee. They had to work for that one. The UMass game, the UMass game was alarming to me. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe you're flat as a pancake in a game that you can still win convincingly, but when you're giving up, 226 rushing yards to UMass, that's a concern to me. I don't care what the situation. That's a concern when a team like Georgia, with the edge in physicality and athleticism, especially, and quality of player along the trenches, should be dominant against a team like UMass. And you still give up 226 rushing yards to UMass. That's a concern. And then what also concerns me is the emotional and physical toll the Georgia Tech game on Friday night took out of this team. 44-42. They had to rally back with a huge fourth quarter effort, down at 27-13 at one point in that game, come back to force overtime, 34-34, and then after it felt like that overtime was going to go on forever, 8, 9 overtime periods, including all those 2-point conversion exchanges at the end, and finally Georgia was able to survive and outlast Georgia Tech. And again, that was a game that took that was a physical fucking football game, Georgia Tech and Georgia. Just the punishment, the physicality. Both teams, it was a run-heavy type of game. How much did it take out of Georgia? And now they got to go up against a Texas team that is playing with a level of physicality that I think has gotten better later in the season. They haven't lost since that loss, obviously, to Georgia. And I thought the way they played against A&M in particular, I know A&M, they capitalized on a pick six. They almost capitalized on a punt block that looked like it was going to get them right back into the game. But I thought in the trenches, Texas's defensive front was dominant. How many times did A&M have a chance to get a yard or 2 yards to keep a drive alive?
That's what we talked about, the defense.
Yep. They couldn't get it. The short yardage defense was dominant over A&M. And that's essentially what ended up winning the game for the Texas Longhorns there. The defense was awesome. They were able to run the football against a team that was supposed to be decent against the run, although we did see Auburn kind of run it against A&M. So maybe that was a foreshadowing that Texas would be able to have some success. But 240 on the ground. Wisner had the majority of those rushing yards. Look at the balance in the receiving core for Texas. Matthew Golden, Ryan Wingo, obviously Isaiah Bond, and then, of course, the great tight end, this guy, Gunnar Helm. Very, very impressive for Texas as well. So I don't know. I feel Georgia has not played great these last couple games. They certainly didn't play great against Georgia Tech, and they escaped in that game. Texas is playing, I think, some of their maybe one of their best games all year was against A&M, just dominant on defense in that game. I feel, and then you throw in that little added chip on your shoulder. It's the SEC championship game. It's a chance to cement a great seed in the playoff. It's not like it's not a motivation issue. Both teams are motivated, clearly, to want to win this game. It's the SEC championship. But I like the extra little chip on that shoulder, C-Mac, for Texas. We got embarrassed at home by Georgia back in October. Let's deal out some payback. Let's play physical. And I think if they play physical at the line of scrimmage, at the point of attack against Georgia, the way they did against A&M, with Georgia coming off the physical pounding of that overtime marathon against Georgia Tech, I think Texas could wear them down over the course of 4 quarters. At less than 3, it's Texas or pass for me. C-Mac, what do you think here? SEC championship, quite the matchup.
Well, this is always the big thing. Georgia, which we did fade them favorites, and they were dogs against Texas the first time. They're just, when they've been in this role, it's kind of a different monster. One thing that I thought, like last week again, Georgia Tech ran for 260 yards. They threw for 300. They dominated everything.
Yeah.
But man, they had some bad fumbles late. They missed a field goal, but the time possession, 37-29, the yards, it was crazy. I mean, the meltdown and then the craziness of the back and forth, in OT was nuts. So seeing that, this from that first game, and they got down. This was the biggest problem too. 3 fumbles and a pick, and it just was like that. Short fields for Georgia, and they took advantage. And Texas, which I think their defense is very good, and we just saw it last week, held a few field goals, but they gave a touchdown, and they were just down whatever it was, 20-0, so quick, and they couldn't come back. Beck still had 3 picks in that game. Beck's best game all year was last week. That's the best I'd seen him. He didn't throw a pick, 5 touchdowns, 300 yards.
Come back in the fourth quarter, especially. He was really.
It's the best I've seen him.
Yeah.
Play, but he's even in that first game, the 3 picks, but it kind of didn't matter. The game was out of it. This was the big one. That first matchup, they got down, but they didn't run it. They still ran it 29 times, 27 yards. Texas has to run the football on Georgia, like Georgia Tech just did. Like they do that, they win here big in this revenge game. Can they do that? And Georgia will be ready for it. As big as that game was last week, they got by. I mean, there's motivation for both of these teams, and it's a get back. Down the stretch, we've seen Texas winning games, but, Arkansas, I don't think it was too impressive. The defense came up big, which you hit on, and I've been in the last couple weeks. That's what I've been most impressed, is winning these games on the SEC, going on the road or a neutral spot like this, and their defense stepping up and kind of winning like a 20-10 game, a 17-7 type game, and getting the job done for them. So, this one's tough. I think the revenge is Texas. Just every time Georgia has got plus points by them the last 5 or 6 years, Gary Smart, it's been a play, and they've came to play. So it's just tough to go against that right now.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, I
was on the under. Real quick on the total, I was on the under in the first game. I think this is lower. Was the first game at 50? Or was all 57?
The last
was
game,
it really 57?
The last game, I will check right now. I've got it right in front of me. I've got all the.
I guess. Yeah, 57.
That's a big adjustment. Whoa. Holy shit.
Holy shit. So, yeah, I don't know if I get on it because that was kind of an easy under. Sometimes I've gotten it's more the Bama, Georgia, and those I talk about with the big games and these, Pavano, you get points, which has just been the weirdest. Remember, I talk about that all the time. Ohio State and Bama, they get points. Yeah.
To be honest, after seeing an 8-point adjustment down, and I get it, Texas's defense looked really good. I think they can run on. Please, I hope that the Texas is smart enough, and Sark should know this. Commit to your gut. Commit to Wisner. Commit to these guys running the football in this football game. And if you do that, you're going to have success, because the Georgia Tech just showed you the blueprint to success. Get Wisner going, get Jaden Blue going, get your running game going here with those two guys, and just pound the rock. This team was in a physical fucking war last week with Georgia Tech. Why would you not try to pound the football right at them? And plus, Georgia Tech ran the football with great deal. You know what I would do here? Because guess what also worked? You know what was a big deal with them running, with them having success? Was Hayden's King, man. What a warrior performance from that guy. He's the guy I'm absolutely heartbroken for losing that game. He was a warrior in that game. Just the punishment he took. He was like Bryson Daly. He would take a hit and not go down and try to keep going for more yards. His ability to run the football, those RPOs, those quarterback runs, they drove Georgia nuts in that game last week. Drove them absolutely insane, and they had a hard time stopping it. If I'm Sark, I know Quinn Ewers is my guy, and he can throw the ball, and there's good receivers. I get some kind of fucking Arch Manning package going in this game. I do. What do you think of that? Doesn't that make sense? If I'm trying to we got our ass handed to us in October. We got to try to do some things different this time around if we're going to beat a team like the Georgia Bulldogs. Get a fucking Arch Manning package going and get him on the edge, running the football, and try to do some of the shit that Georgia Tech did last week that gave Georgia's defense absolute trouble in that game.
We'll see. If they want to bring him in, maybe. I just think in games like this is when the playbook, you open it up. This is trick play time. There's no more. Everything's in here in these games, these championship games. So I think you could see. So whether it's a fake punt or just flea flickers and just some strange stuff, I'd open it up.
Yeah, there's no doubt. No, it's definitely going to be Quinn Ewers, Kong's Clips that's going to start. But I'm just saying that I would get Arch Manning involved in this game somehow. On some certain just a few plays here and there. Obviously, Quinn's going to be the guy at quarterback, but certainly I think that if I'm certainly looking at what I saw from Georgia Tech and what they were able to do against Georgia, I'd try to get some kind of a quarterback run game going at least a little bit throughout this game with Arch Manning, who's more adept at that. Let's be honest, as far as a running quarterback goes and athleticism, he's got a little bit more of it than Quinn Ewers does. So from that standpoint, he'd be the guy you'd want to roll with as far as a quarterback run type of game here in this. I would honestly go with it. Devin the Dude, Kong's Clips, Old E, Slippery Rock. We appreciate all of you guys joining us here in the chat. Hit the like button. And thanks for joining us here on College Football Hitting the Books. All right, we got 3 games left. Sun Belt Championship game, the Marshall Thundering. And by the way, about that SEC game, I do lean over. I do. These SEC Championship games, it's pretty crazy. I think more often than not, they've been overs here in the Dome. And again, weather won't be a factor. I think maybe a little over adjustment based on and plus how many snaps was Georgia's defense on the field against Georgia Tech, because Georgia Tech owned the time of possession. You don't think that's going to have a reverberating effect here on Saturday when that defense was out on the field for as long as they were against Georgia Tech, and all those snaps, all those plays, and you got to come back and you got to play another physical team like Texas? That's why I think that defense could give up points here, because just the hangover physically from that war with Georgia Tech. And then meanwhile, I think Georgia offensively can do enough against Texas, and the total's only 49. So I do think over could be in play.